Hey, left you with a bit of a cliffhanger there, didn't I? So, let's see if we can't finish this second task. If this is the second task, what's the third task going to be like? Alrighty. Mer people were rising with him. He could see them swirling around him with ease, watching him struggle through the water. Would they pull him back down to the depths when time was up? Did they perhaps eat humans? Harry's legs were seizing up with the effort to keep swimming. His shoulders were aching horribly with the effort of dragging Ron and the girl. He was drawing breath with extreme difficulty. He could feel pain on the sides of his neck again. He was becoming very aware of how wet the water was in his mouth, yet the darkness was definitely thinning now. He could see daylight above him. He kicked hard with his flippers and discovered that they were nothing more than feet. Water was flooding through his mouth, into his lungs. He was starting to feel dizzy, but he knew light and air only 10 feet above him. He had to get there. He had to. Harry kicked his legs so hard and fast it felt as though his muscles were screaming in protest. His very brain felt waterlogged. He couldn't breathe. He needed oxygen. He had to keep going. He could not stop. And then he felt his head break the surface of the lake. Wonderful, cold, clean air was making his face sting. He gulped it down, feeling as though he had never breathed properly before, and panting, pulled Ron and the little girl up with him. All around him, wild, green-haired heads were emerging out of the water with him, but they were smiling at him. The crowd in the stands was making a great deal of noise, shouting and screaming. They all seemed to be on their feet. Harry had the impression they thought that Ron and the little girl might be dead, but they were wrong. Both of them opened their eyes, and the girl looked scared and confused. But Ron merely expelled a great spout of water, blinked in the bright light, turned to Harry and said, "Wet, this, isn't it?" Then he spotted Fleur's sister. "What did you bring her for?" "Fleur didn't turn up. I couldn't leave her," Harry panted. "Harry, you prat. You didn't take that song thing seriously, did you? Dumbledore wouldn't have let us all drown." "The song said. It was only to make sure you got back inside the time limit," said Ron. "I hope you didn't waste time down there acting the hero." Harry felt both stupid and annoyed. It was all very well for Ron. He'd been asleep. He hadn't felt how eerie it was down in the lake, surrounded by spear-carrying mer people who looked more than capable of murder. "Come on," Harry said shortly. "Help me with her. I don't think she can swim very well." They pulled Fleur's sister through the water, back toward the bank where the judges stood watching. 20 merpeople accompanying them like a guard of honor, singing their horrible screechy songs. Harry could see Madame Pomfrey fussing over Hermione, Krum, Cedric, and Cho, all of whom were wrapped in thick blankets. Dumbledore and Ludo Bagman stood beaming at Harry and Ron from the bank as they swam nearer. But Percy, who looked very white and somehow much younger than usual, came splashing out to meet them. Meanwhile, Madame Maxime was trying to restrain Fleur de Coeur, who was quite hysterical, fighting tooth and nail to return to the water. "Gabrielle! Gabrielle! Is she alive? Is she hurt?" "She's fine," Harry tried to tell her, but he was so exhausted he could hardly talk, let alone shout. Percy seized Ron and was dragging him back to the bank. "You're off, Percy, I'm all right." Dumbledore and Bagman were pulling Harry upright. Fleur had broken free of Madame Maxime and was hugging her sister. "It was the Grindylows. They attacked me. Oh, Gabrielle, I thought... "Come here, you," said Madame Pomfrey. She seized Harry and pulled him over to Hermione and the others, wrapped him so tightly in a blanket that he felt as though he were in a straitjacket, and forced a measure of very hot potion down his throat. Steam gushed out of his ears. "Harry, well done," Hermione cried. "You did it. You found out how, all by yourself." "Well," said Harry. He would have told her about Dobby, but he had just noticed Karkaroff watching him. He was the only judge who had not left the table, the only judge not showing signs of pleasure and relief that Harry, Ron, and Fleur's sister had got back safely. "Yeah, that's right," said Harry, raising his voice slightly so that Karkaroff could hear him. "You have a water beetle in your hair." Oh, I'm reading the wrong voice. "You have a water beetle in your hair, Hermione," said Krum. Harry had the impression that Krum was drawing her attention back onto himself, perhaps to remind her that he had just rescued her from the lake. But Hermione brushed away the beetle impatiently and said, "You're well outside the time limit, though, Harry. Did it take you ages to find us?" Okay, so Harry didn't meet the time limit, apparently. "Did it take you ages to find us?" "No, I found you okay." Harry's feeling of stupidity was growing. Now he was out of the water, it seemed perfectly clear that Dumbledore's safety precautions wouldn't have permitted the death of a hostage just because their champion hadn't turned up. Why hadn't he just grabbed Ron and gone? He would have been first back. Cedric and Krum hadn't wasted time worrying about anyone else. They hadn't taken the Mersong seriously. Dumbledore was crouching at the water's edge, deep in conversation with what seemed to be the chief merperson, a particularly wild and ferocious-looking female. He was making the same sort of screechy noises that the merpeople made when they were above water. Clearly, Dumbledore could speak Mermish. Finally, he straightened up, turned to his fellow judges, and said, "A conference before we give the marks, I think." The judges went into a huddle. Madame Pomfrey had gone to rescue Ron from Percy's clutches. She led him over to Harry and the others, gave him a blanket and some pepper-up potion, then went to fetch Fleur and her sister. Fleur had many cuts on her face and arms, and her robes were torn, but she didn't seem to care, nor would she allow Madame Pomfrey to clean them. "Look after Gabrielle," she told her, and then she turned to Harry. "You saved her," she said breathlessly, "even though she was not your hostage." "Yeah," said Harry, who was now heartily wishing he'd left all three girls tied to the statue. Fleur bent down, kissed Harry twice on the cheek. He felt his face burn and wouldn't have been surprised if steam was coming out of his ears again. Then said to Ron, "And you, too, you helped." "Yeah," said Ron, looking extremely hopeful. "Yeah, a bit." Fleur swooped down on him too and kissed him. Hermione looked simply furious. But just then Ludo Bagman's magically magnified voice boomed out beside them, making them all jump and causing the crowd in the stands to go very quiet. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have reached our decision. Chieftainess Marcus has told us exactly what happened at the bottom of the lake, and we have therefore decided to award marks out of 50 for each of the champions as follows. Fleur Delacour, though she demonstrated excellent use of the Bubblehead charm, was attacked by Grindylows as she approached her goal and failed to retrieve her hostage. We award her 25 points. Applause from the stands. I deserve 0, said Fleur thoroughly, shaking her magnificent head. Boy, it's 10 minutes. Yep. Yeah, I think this is good. We'll leave another cliffhanger. So we know Fleur got 25 points. We still need to find out what Diggory, Crumb, and Harry got for the second task.